Hello and thank you for taking the time to watch my video. My name is Eric and today we're going to be working on a shaking input box. Now this is a real down and dirty, real simple tutorial, so hopefully you'll just go ahead and follow along. What we want to try to build is this box. When somebody types into it and clicks enter in a normal field, a lot of times the box doesn't do anything, but in this case, say for example they try to hit enter and they don't have an input, then the box should shake left and right. If they type, for example, their name and click the button, we can see there's a success message. So that's what we're going to be building today. So let's go ahead and start by setting up our environment, all right? All right, so first let's go ahead and right click on our desktop if you're using a PC. I'm not sure the commands on a Mac, but let's go ahead and create a folder, and we'll call this folder shaker, because that's kind of what the box does. It shakes, right? All right, now since I'm running VS Code, all I have to do is right click and open with code, and my software IDE opens up. And if you'll give me a minute here, I'll go ahead and open that up to size. All right, so here we can see we have the folder shaker. Let's go ahead and get started by putting in the appropriate files. I'll start by creating the index file. We'll just go ahead and name it shake. All right, .html. Okay, that's built. Now we'll go ahead and do the same thing with our CSS file. We'll say shake.css. And we'll go ahead and create shake.js. I apologize if I'm going really fast, but we have a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. Okay, so we'll go over to our HTML file here, and because I'm running Emmet, all I have to do is hit exclamation point and the tab, and I have my boilerplate. And let's go ahead and change the title to something like, well, you guessed it, shake. Okay, and let's go ahead and go over to we're going to be using Font Awesome for one of my arrows here. So if you want to go ahead and type in Font Awesome /get started, and you can find the CDN, I believe, here. Yep, go ahead and click on this link and go ahead right above your title line, and you can go ahead and add it there, add your link there. I also want to make a reference to my CSS file, so I'm going to put that before my Font Awesome right here. So we'll say link, and we'll name this shake.css. All right, and that should cover the stylings. Let's go ahead and go down before the closing body tag, and I'm going to put my script file in there. Script, and we'll give that the source attribute of shake.js. Okay, so now everything's all set up and ready to go in my structure, and we'll go ahead and start by putting in the body tag. First, I'll go ahead and put in a container so everything can be centered all nice in the middle of the screen. Inside that, we're going to go ahead and put a form box, so I'll give it an ID. I'm going to make my container an ID as well. I think that'll help. And we'll give this the class of form box. All right, and inside that we're going to put our arrow icon, and we'll move it around later using CSS and JavaScript. So let's go ahead and put the icon class I with an ID of, let's see, we'll call this next button or BTN. And we'll go ahead and, well, for styling purpose, we'll go ahead and give it a class as well. Let's use the Font Awesome class, which is FOSS, for the Font Awesome that I'm using, the latest, and then fa arrow right. All right, and that'll give us our right arrow, so that the user can click on that when they want to enter their text. All right, we'll give this a label, and we don't need the for attribute, so we'll go ahead and type in an ID. And we'll give this idea of input label. All right, and We can generally generate the text that goes into this using JavaScript, but for this particular tutorial I wanted to keep things kind of simple. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and put the message here. So type something here. Really, you can type anything you want here. This is what's going to show up in the box indicating to the user what to do. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I have everything all ready to go. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to our styles sheet, and we'll go ahead and start styling. All right, so the first thing we want to do is, let's see, the nice thing about VS Code is we can go ahead and open up a live server. If you have the VS Code, you can install the live server. Let's see. I think I have that used already. Let's go ahead and try another one. Hang on. I don't know what's going on here, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll try this again. All right, click, open with live server, and it's giving me an error. Okay, let me pause and I'll come right back after I get that figured out. Okay, I'm back. It looks like I found out what the problem was. I had the live server open up in another application. I'll just go ahead and try this again. And we'll click open with live server. And there we go. This is what we've got so far. We have our arrow and we have our message to the user and what to do. Well, we haven't set up any of the other styles yet, so we may start to see some things happen with our CSS file. Let's go ahead and go into the CSS, and let's go ahead and create a black background just so we can see things nice and clearly. We'll choose the body element, and we'll say background, and we'll give that a property that's just simply black. All right, we'll save that, and there we go. Now we can't see anything. So that's okay. We'll fix that in a minute. Let's go ahead and target our container element. Our ID was container. Looks like, okay, looks good. Okay, we'll give that a height of 100 viewport height. And I forgot my colon. That'll give us an error for sure. Or just won't do absolutely anything. Okay, we want to display this flex. Take advantage of the flex properties. And we'll give the flex direction of column. Flex direction column. And we're going to justify our context so it's more towards the top. And we'll go ahead and align all our items to the center using align items center. All right, now we're probably not going to be able to see anything just yet when I hit save. Nope, nothing yet. But let's work on that real quick. I think this will do it. We'll go ahead and target our form box. And we'll make the background of that box. We'll give it a nice white color using hex value FFF, and we'll save that. And there we go. We can now finally see our content in there. All right. And we're going to give this a relative position using position relative to the browser, and give it a width of around 600 pixels. Let's see if that works. We'll save that. And nothing happened yet. We'll give it a border radius of 5 pixels. Nice rounded corners on all 4 corners. And we'll go ahead and give it a transition, which we'll employ with the JavaScript a little bit later. We'll give it a 0.1. Ease in and out. It's a nice thing about VS Code is it gives us clues on what to type or some choices we have. Okay, we'll save that. Okay, so we can see the nice rounded corners, but our box is going to be much bigger in a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and work on this next button. Okay, so I think if I remember right, we named that next BTN. Let's see, yeah, here we go. Next BTN. So we'll go ahead and target that class or that ID. Next BTN. And there we go. All right, so we're going to give this an absolute position so we can position it precisely where we want. Position absolute. We're going to set it off set right by 20 pixels. And bottom, we'll go up from the bottom 10 pixels. All right, we'll give the font size of that arrow, let's say 30 pixels. Oops, that's going to be hard to see with this black background, so we'll check it out a little bit later. So we'll give it a color of black, and let's give it a color of white. See if we can see it. There it is. We can see it barely in the upper right corner. All right, so at least we know it's there. I'm going to change it back to black. Okay. All right, let's float this arrow off to the right. So we'll say float right. And we'll make, when we hover over, I think we can see that nothing happens. When we hover our mouse over that arrow, it's there, believe me. We'll say cursor pointer. We'll save that and see what happens. There we go. We can see our little hand icon that appears when we hover over it. So that's good. So something must be done right. All right, let's give this a Z index so it always stays on top of 2. Now, of course, I am assuming that you know HTML and CSS, so if not, there's a lot of wonderful tutorials on those. So like I said, I'm going to be going really fast through this. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the hover. So when we hover over our arrow icon here, we want to at least see that it's an actionable item. And so we'll do that by using the hover. All right, so we'll target the next BTN and then the hover state. Okay, we'll give it a different color. Let's go with a nice gray color. I like 666, 666. All right, save. And can't see the effect quite yet, but we'll get there. All right, so let's target the input group here. Next. All right, so we're targeting just the input portion of that. We're going to also give that a position of relative. We'll give it a width of 100%. And a border. We don't want any border, so we'll just say border none. And we'll make our font size 20 pixels. Font weight of, let's make it bold. And we don't want an outline on our box. We want it to be invisible. So we'll say outline 0. Okay. And let's go ahead and give this, I think that pretty much wraps it up there. Let's go ahead and see if we see any changes or not. Nothing yet. All right, let's continue. Okay. Let's target the actual label. This thing, it says type something here. All right, so we'll say input group. Within that, we have the input label. And we'll say our position is absolute. We don't have any pointer events, but let's go ahead and specify that by saying none. We want our font nice and big. Let's give it 40 pixels. And we'll give it a bold font weight. All right. Okay, so we're not going to see any changes just yet. Let's go ahead and continue targeting the input group. And within that, the input validation and Something's not quite right, guys. You know what? I think I forgot something in the HTML. I think I forgot my form entry. Let's take a look here. Let's see, we have our icon. We don't have an input group. Okay, that's not a good thing. Let's go ahead and add that right now. All right, so we'll create a div. And we'll give it the ID of input group. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Let's go ahead and do that. ID input group. And let's go ahead and move this closing div. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and put this on the other side of this. There we go. What else? Make sure I'm not missing anything else. Do we have our input field? Oh, looks like I didn't put the input field either. Let's go ahead and move this. Let's go ahead and move this under our arrow. Okay, clean this up a bit. All right, so we got our input group, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of this. Let's see, so we have all our divs. We have this. This is our form box. We have our element, our input group. Looks like it's so far so good. Let's go ahead and add our input field. Our input field. We kind of need that, guys. So, I'll create our div with an ID of input field. All right, now let's go ahead and see if that changes things over here once we save. We'll go ahead and move this. We'll move this under here. And let's go ahead and push these over a bit. Okay, we'll go with that. I'll save. Ooh, and everything disappeared. All right, let's check that out and see what's happening in our CSS. I'm getting some errors here. It doesn't like this. Sometimes in VS Code it'll give you little warnings if something's wrong. I didn't finish here. It's when I realized I screwed up something. Let's go ahead and put in our input label now, because we're trying to target something that's not there. Input label. All right, so we'll put that at left, 30 pixels. Give it a font size. Font size of 22 pixels. Font weight of normal. And a color of, let's give it a nice, interesting gray color, 9E, 9E, 9E. Let's save that and see if we see anything. Nope, nothing yet. Interesting. I think I have something wrong here. Okay, something should be happening. Here we go. If you look at the top of the screen, it looks like I forgot to save something. So my HTML has not been saved. So let me go ahead and go back into my HTML and actually save that and see if that makes any difference. Any difference here? And we'll save this, and still no change. Hold on. Okay, it looks like I still have got something wrong because I'm not getting anything here. Let me check my HTML. See, we've got our input groups. I think we need to add some more styles to the input group. Let me go back. I'm going to check. Let's see, do I have any input groups? Just input groups, and it doesn't look like I do. So let's go ahead and go underneath the next button, and let's go ahead and add a style for our input group. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a position. I think what's happening is we just can't see it yet because it's hidden. Relative. We'll give it a relative position. Give it some padding of 30 pixels and a margin of 20 pixels. Let's see if that helps. Ah, there we go. We finally got something on the screen, and it looks like we've got our arrow over here somewhere. Let me go ahead and make this just a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Ah, so there we go. We can see the arrow here. All right. All right, so we can see that when we hover, it turns to a nice gray color. This is kind of big. We're going to have to fix that a little bit. All right, so go ahead and I want it a little more responsive. See, when we get down to this point, kind of the arrow disappears. Let's go ahead and add a media query while we're here. I'm going to go down here. And let's go ahead and say at media max width, let's say under 600 pixels. We want it to do something special. Let's see. Let's say we're going to target our form box. That is this whole white box with the black arrow, which you remember it's absolutely positioned within. So we'll go ahead and target that form box. Let's see. We'll give it a width of 80%. Ah, there we go. Now we can see things a little bit better. All right. Okay. Yeah, so it grows there. I don't like how big this is, and it's getting cut off. Let's see. Let's see if we can fix that. Input label. I think we're too big on the input label. So here we go. So let's bring this down to maybe 20 pixels and see if that fixes it. There we go. That's a little better. All right, and this box seems just a little bit too small for what we're trying to do. Let's see our form box. I think that may be what we need to target. Our form box. We've got our width established. Let's see. Maybe it's the container. Let me look. Well, the container looks good. Okay. Oh, here we go. There's a clue. A little green underline says, I don't know what the heck this is. So let's go ahead and put an S there. It's display flex. Ah, there we go. There we go, guys. See that? That's what we want. And see, we can have our hover. This is the right size. When we grow, it stays nice and centered. When it gets too close to the edges, it shrinks down for us nice and neat. All right. So let's go ahead and continue. All right. So what we wanted to do is when this arrow, when we click on this arrow, as we can see now, nothing happens. But when we click on it, what we want is we want this to turn red and shake if nothing's in the input box, or we want to give it the green arrow and a message that says success. So let's go ahead and style those first, and then we'll worry about the rest of that in the JavaScript. All right. All right. So on top of our media query, we'll go ahead and add our error. We'll create an error class, and we'll handle that in the JavaScript, but we'll just go ahead and take care of our CSS here. And we're going to take the error on the next button, so we'll target the ID of next btn, and we'll give that a nice red color. So we'll say color, and we'll give it a hex value of ff2d26. All right, we'll save that. Nothing's going to happen, obviously, yet until we finish with the JavaScript. So let's go ahead and do the success button, which is, we're going to give it a class of success, and we'll also target the same button, next btn, and we'll give that a color of, well, just give it a green color, green. All right, and I think that covers it for the CSS. All right. Okay, guys, before we jump into the JavaScript, there's one thing I noticed. I want to make this arrow just a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and jump into that next button. And let's see if we can find it. Here we go. We have it set at a font size of 30. I think that might be a little bit better if we make that either a 50 or a 40. Let's see. Oh, it's a little too big. I think 40 would probably be better. Ah, there we go. Perfect. All right. And let's go ahead and refresh that. Ah, there we go. Okay, so we'll save that. All right. Ready to move on to the JavaScript. Let's go ahead and jump into the JavaScript. We've got a nice clean slate. So since this is about making the box shake, let's go ahead and set up our parameters for that here. Let's go ahead and put some notes. We're going to have some box shaking transition times. Okay, so let's go ahead and establish that with a variable using const, since this is working with the ECMAScript 6. Okay, so we'll say the shake time, and we're going to establish that at 100. So this will be our shake transition time. Time. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and initialize that initial position for the question at the 0 position. Let's go ahead and comment that. Initialize position at the question area. Okay, so we'll use the variable let position be equal to 0. All right, now let's go ahead and establish all of our IDs. So we're going to initialize our DOM elements, document object model elements. Okay, like our form box, our next button, etc. So we'll use the const variable keyword. So we'll say form box, and we'll use camel casing here. And they're going to set that equal to the document dot query selector, and then we'll go ahead and target the ID of form box. Okay, and we'll go ahead and close that up with our semicolon. Don't forget your semicolon. So many times I have forgotten, and this cost me a lot of trouble finding where the error was. We're going to go ahead and copy that and paste that in. Let's see, 1, 2, I think about 4 more times. 4. All right, so our next is our next button. If I remember, let's go back to our HTML. So we have our form box. There we go. Next button, input group, input field, and our input label. We'll go ahead and target those straight on down like that. So let's go to our next button next. All right. So we'll say next btn. We'll use the same selector, and we'll target the ID next btn, just like it's spelled in the HTML. Okay, btn next, be it no capitalization on that, nor in this, nor that, nor that. All right, so let's go ahead and go down the list. I think the next one was our input group, and we'll camel case our input group. Input group. And yes, I'm assuming that you know about camel casing. Hopefully. So we make the first letter lowercase and the second word in the item a capital letter. But in our ID here, we want just all lowercase. So we'll say input-group. Did I spell that right? Now I'm all paranoid since I made so many mistakes in the beginning of this video. All right, so let's go ahead and change form box to, let's see, input field. Input field. And we'll change this to input field as our ID. All right, and finally our input label. Say input label. And we'll change this ID to input label to match our HTML. Input label. All right, so we've got all these closed with a semicolon. Now let's go ahead and through JavaScript target our DOM onload so we can initialize. All right, so we'll target document dot add event listener, and we'll target the DOM content loaded. Now when that happens, we want it to look for our question. So we'll say get question. That'll be the field where somebody types. All right, let's go ahead and close this off with a semicolon. And then we'll go ahead and let's go make this just a little bit bigger so I have everything on the same line. There we go. Now we want to target our button, and when somebody actually clicks it, so we'll say next button, click. All right, so we'll use we're going to target this variable, next button, and we'll add an event listener. So the computer is listening for when the user clicks it. So we'll say add event listener, and we're going to target their clicking. Okay, and then we want to validate that somehow, because if they click it when there's nothing in there, we want something special to happen. All right, let's go ahead and close this off with a semicolon. Okay, and not everybody uses the click. They're not going to always click this button. What if somebody clicks enter? We want to make sure that the action happens the same regardless of whether they click on it or if they hit the enter button. So let's go ahead and set up a function for that. So we'll say input field enter click. All right, so I want to be listening for a click instead of a mouse click, an enter click. So we'll say the input field is clicked with a key up of enter. So we'll say add event listener. Sorry about the siren noise, guys. Can't help that, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and target the key up. So after they've clicked the enter key and they've pulled up on their key, we're going to be listening for that. And we're going to target an event. We'll use the arrow function. And we'll go ahead and establish an if statement. So if the E and the key code, which is 13, if I'm not mistaken, which is the enter key, if that key is selected or initialized, we're going to validate with a function called validate. All right, now let's go ahead and close this. All right, so that'll be a valid way of entering the information. All right, so let's go ahead and establish our functions now. Oops, I'm going to put a note here, functions. All right, so let's go ahead and target the question. So we'll create a question function. So function get question. I think we saw that earlier. Where is that? Here we go, get question. So we're listening for that on the DOM. So we'll go ahead and get that started. So we're get question, again, camel casing. Set that up as a function. And we're listening for the input field. And we're going to focus. We want a cursor to appear and when we initialize this program. So we're going to focus. We use the internal function focus. Okay. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and set up our shake function. And we'll call it the shake. Okay, so function, we want to transform the position of the x-axis and possibly the y-axis, which we probably won't, but let's go ahead and establish that as one of the parameters of the function. So we have x value and the y value, and we'll see how that works in a minute. Okay, so we have our form box. This white box here is our form box. We want this whole box to shake left and right when somebody clicks without there being any text in it. Okay, if there is text in it, it won't shake because it'll be a valid entry. So we'll say that the form box, the style of the form box is going to make it transform. So it's going to transition from the left to the right. So we're going to set that equal to, and we'll use the ECMAScript 6 backticks, so interpolation, and we'll say we want this to translate and on the x-axis by a number of pixels, a certain number of pixels, and we want it to translate on the y-axis by a certain number of pixels. And let's go ahead and close that off, and we'll establish what those pixels are in a little bit. All right, so we've got our shake function down, and we'll give it more details a little bit later. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to the validation. We want something to happen when they click the arrow or hit enter with nothing in the box. So we'll go ahead and create a function. That function that we talked about here is our validate function, and we're going to go ahead and establish that here. So validate. So if our input field value, the value that the user enters, is empty, so we'll say equal to nothing, we want something to happen. Okay, so we'll create a function called input fail. Okay, and if that is not the case, we'll say else, and we'll say that the input actually passed. So we'll say input pass, and we'll create a function for that as well. Let's go ahead and close that with a semicolon. And let's go ahead and establish what happens in each of those cases. So we'll start off with our pass function. So if it passes, we're going to establish our input pass function. So we'll say function input pass. There's our function. And inside, we'll say that our form box, and we'll assign a new class name. And we saw this in our CSS. So we'll make that equal to success. All right, so if you remember, if we go to our CSS and we look for our success class, I think it's down towards the bottom. Here we go. We're going to apply a green color to that. All right. Okay, so we're also going to input some information into the input field. So we'll say that the input field value is equal to the word or string success. So when we click on that, we're going to see a message, a green message of some type that says, oh, the message won't be green. We're not going to make the message green. We're going to make the arrow green because we're using the success class, and we're going to actually replace the text that the user puts in with the word success. Okay. Okay, so what if the user doesn't enter anything and hits enter or clicks the arrow? Let's go ahead and set up that function right now. We'll call this fail. We'll comment that as fail. And we'll create a function called input fail, which we can see up here. This is our input fail function. Okay. And in that, we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to establish letting I equal 0. And we'll establish I as 0. And if I is less than, let's say we want it to shake back and forth 3 times, so we'll establish 6 because it has to go one direction, then the other, then the other, then the other, equaling a total of 6. But it'll only shake 3 times. 3 times to the left, 3 times to the right. And we'll say I increment, I plus plus. Okay, so once that happens, we'll go ahead and input our data. So we're going to set timeout. I spelled that wrong. Timeout. We're going to set our timeout to our transform. And we'll set our shake time times. Now, if you don't understand what I'm putting in here, don't worry. I encourage you to play with it, change the numbers around, see what different effects can be created or what happens. Okay, so we'll establish that I modulus 2, and we're going to multiply that times 2 minus 1, and then we'll take that value and we'll multiply it for 20 pixels on the x-axis, and we do not want it moving on the y-axis, so we're going to set that value to 0. Remember I said we were going to go ahead excuse me. Okay, sorry. When remember when I said we were going to establish those values 20 and 0, we see that up here, our x value and our y value. That's what we're talking about right here. Let's go ahead and test it and see if it works. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save. And I click it and nothing happens. So let's go ahead and open up our developer tools, hitting F12 on the PC. And it looks like I have a problem on line 21, and I'm missing something here. So let's go ahead and take a look at line 21. Okay, oh, simple. I missed a comma. All right, and we'll save, see if that works. Oops, looks like I'm missing something also on line 36. Ah, this is not supposed to be a comma. This is supposed to be a semicolon. See, I told you guys, be careful those semicolons. They'll bite you. All right, we'll save that. And oh, it's turning green. That's weird. It's supposed to turn red. So let's find out what I did wrong. All right, so I have our shake transform on the X and Y, and our validation says if it's equal to an empty string, it will fail. We'll say input fail. Otherwise, input pass. So let's find out what's going on. It's passing when it shouldn't. So our input pass gives us a success. Our input should change to success. And on fail, let's see what's going on with fail. This is where we see the shaking transition. Let's see, what did I do here? Let's see if I can figure out what I did wrong. Okay, look, we got another darn missing semicolon. Those, I tell you, always bite me. Let's test it. And it's still turning green. All right, guys, I'm going to have to figure out what the heck I did wrong here. I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back. Okay, I am back. I found my mistake. Here we go. What I forgot to do is to add the class of errors. See how we put the class name on the form box if we have a successful message? That's why when I'm clicking this, I'm getting a success, because I haven't established here under the fail function that I want to take my form box and I want to add the class name error. Okay, we saw that in the CSS error, which is that red color. Okay, let's go ahead and save that, and let's click, and still we're getting the green. Okay guys, I had to pause the video. I found something wasn't quite right. If you notice, when I hit the green arrow, it stays green. But if we look at the code's good. I'm not getting any errors in the console. It says that the the form validates even though there's nothing in there. So I finally found the mistake. We'll go back into our HTML, and I don't know if any of you caught it. Congratulations if you did. But this is not supposed to be a div. This is supposed to be an input. So we have our input field right here, and we'll just go ahead and change that for input. And let's hopefully this changes everything. We'll save that and click this. Ah, there we go. Now it shakes. See that? So let's go ahead and go back in. Now if we notice, we shake, but we end up on the right side instead of back where we originally started. So let's go ahead and fix that. We'll jump down to our validation input fail. Okay, so we end up on the right side. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of code here that brings it back into the correct position. So underneath our initial shaking, we'll set another timeout. So set timeout, and we'll do another transform. And we'll set our shake time, and we're just going to multiply that by the exact same number of our iterations. So we'll set that to multiplication by 6, and we'll set the 0 and 0. Oops, let's go ahead and make that a little easier to read, and we'll go ahead and close out that function here. And we're going to put our input function, so we're going to have our focus put back in the area where the user types, so they know that they have to type something. So input field focus, and we're going to establish that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Okay, looks like I'm getting an error here. We have something on line 65. Comma. Again, semicolon bit me in the butt. All right, let's save that. Goes away. We'll go ahead and click that. It goes back to the same position. So let's go ahead and type my name, E-R-I-K, and enter, and I get a success message. Well, this tutorial didn't go exactly as I planned. I made a lot of mistakes. Well, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and put something together a lot quicker and a little cleaner than I did. Let me know in the comments what you think. And hopefully I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.